Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another Game for Thought live stream hosted here at Hogeschool's campus for digital arts and entertainment. My name is Allie Weiss. I'm a community manager here at DIE, and I cannot wait to present to you all our very last Game for Thought stream of the academic year right here on our Twitch channel. So if you are new to the Game for Thought live stream series or are just scrolling through on Twitch and you find yourself here, no worries, happy to have you here. I'll just quickly go over the general concept of the stream. So our campus of digital arts and entertainment at Hogeschool, we are a school that focuses on the game industry and the film industry and more generally the digital entertainment industry. And so in our classes that sometimes are a bit more technical, sometimes it can become easy to lose sight of the socially relevant, ethically relevant topics. So we sat down with our students and we decided that it would be a great idea, also enjoyable for us to sit down every month here on Twitch and tackle a different ethically relevant topic every month. So the topic for this month, again, last stream of the academic year, will be crunch time and well-being in the industry. So this stream is going to look a little bit different than the other ones if you have joined us for the previous Game for Thought streams. Typically, we start with a guest presentation or a guest lecture from an industry professional. This time around, because this topic was so highly requested by students, colleagues, and viewers alike, we are just going to jump right into it and head right into the panel discussion with both pre-submitted questions from our very own students and questions from you all out in the Twitch chat. So throughout the entirety of the stream, you are more than welcome to ask your very own questions in the chat. Just be sure to put a Q right before the question so we know over here that what you're asking is a question, and then we'll bring it up in our panel discussion. So I will be the host, the moderator for this evening. Let's just jump into who is on our panel tonight. So joining us as a panel member will be Robin Roday. He is our visual effects major coordinator here at Digital Arts and Entertainment. He has been on quite a few of our previous streams, on the first one about sex and violence in games as a panel member and as a moderator actually for a few other ones. So we're super excited to have Robin back with us. We also have joining us Sophie De Blutz. Sophie is a DIE alumni, so she went to DIE herself. She is now a software engineer at NetSpeak Games, and she very recently, congrats Sophie, made Develop's 30 under 30 list, which is definitely an important accomplishment. We also have joining us Pablo Sanchez. Pablo also went to DIE, so plot twist, a theme going on here. Pablo is a concept artist at Sumo, which is a digital art company as well. We also have joining us Alexander Delagrange. Plot twist, Alexander also went to DIE, and he is a 3D artist at Airborne Studios, And joining us, we have two students here tonight. We have Marcelo Acevedo Pereira. He is a first-year 3D animation student. And we have another student joining us. He was a part of the first stream, Steven Saramock, and he is a second-year game graphics production student. So again, you're more than welcome to submit your questions in the chat throughout the evening. Just keep it mature and keep it respectful in the chat. That's all we ask for you, and we know that you'll do so. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Again, the topic for the evening is crunch time and well-being in the industry. All right, welcome to our panel members for the evening. Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are super excited to have you joining us this evening. So crunch time and well-being. This is what tonight's stream is going to be all about. It was highly requested by students and colleagues alike, so I'm really looking forward to a lively discussion this evening. So just to start out with somewhat of a broad question, I know it might sound a little bit redundant for some of you that are really familiar with this concept, but for viewers out there that aren't really familiar with the concept of crunch time, what is crunch time? And how does it show its face in the game and film industry? Would any of you like to tackle our first question of the evening?
Well, if no one's gonna jump in, I'll leave the second part of that question to some of our bigger industry veterans that we've got in our stream today. Crunch time, in general, sort of a weird concept because there's different ways of interpreting it. Yeah, so we can summarize it as being overtime within our industry, where everybody's just working overtime. But there's also there's a bit of a nuance to it. It can also mean unpaid overtime, because sometimes you get paid for overtime, or sometimes it's not just overtime; it's long-term overtime. So crunch time usually isn't applied when you have this one evening a month where you work a couple of hours late. It's I think the topic that we're discussing today is more when it's over a longer period of time or more often than just a singular experience.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Anyone else would like to add anything? Again, just in general, what crunch time means to you? What is really, in essence, crunch time?
I think I'd like to add to that there's a sense of pressure that's coming from your place of work. I have personally had a passion project that I've worked overtime on, but it was, if it's not like coming from as a pressure coming down from the company, then I wouldn't call that crunch time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kindly have to disagree a bit.
All right, Stephen.
Yes.
If you could just speak up a little bit, that would be great.
I try to. Okay, so I kindly disagree a little bit. I absolutely am on the same points as what crunch time is. I like that we start with a kind of definition so that we're all on the same page, kind of. But I think also like crunch time doesn't essentially need to be like coming from higher ups, but it can also be like enforced from yourself maybe also. Because as students right now, and I'm like, maybe it's personal, that is definitely the case, but I'm feeling like I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself as well, and I don't have like higher ups, and in that sense of like, if you don't finish your work in time with what we demand, then you get fired or whatever. But yeah, I'm like, in this sense, my own boss, and I'm putting myself on crunch, so to speak.
Alexander, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I have a bit of a different view on crunch. Crunch time for me is basically the moment that you realize how well you have management, or a company has been managed. A lot of times, if things go according to plan, crunch time gets minimized. Crunch time usually shows up at the end of a development cycle. This can be at the end of a project, but sometimes a project has different cycles. So it depends where you are. Let's say you're in pre-production. Usually if you're a concept artist, crunch time is going to be at the end of pre-production, but this is not the end of the project. And when a game gets finished, then it's often a lot of departments that need to come together, and they all need to get the project in tip-top shape. And that's usually when you see most of crunch time. Crunch time, in my opinion, should not be planned for. This is kind of when circumstances happen, unforeseen issues come up. A lot of time, this is usual, this is normal in our industry. When they come up, there's suddenly more time than what was planned. to make the project happen. And this is when people need to do overtime. And this is what we call crunch. So I like to make a distinction between overtime, when you're just doing a bit of extra hours, versus crunch time, when you have to get this thing shipped.
Can I hop right in on that as well? I would love to. But maybe I'm just disrupting the planning. But I mean, if you say that it's somehow like always coming up, that some things don't work probably at the beginning or whatever, there needs to be overtime. Why isn't that then like calculated in like an extra buffer, like time buffer, to finish a project in time with, okay, we will have some kind of extra, like say 3 weeks, depending on the projects, obviously, but like some extra buffer time to compensate for that, so that a company does not go into crunch mode.
Well, yeah, sorry, Sophie, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think that's the big thing. That's the problem. It's when I've been asked, like, why do you think crunch is a thing? I immediately go, it's mismanaged, it's poor planning, it's last minute feature creep, it's not all of the work that needed to be done was logged properly. It's just poor planning in the end. So yes, I agree. We shouldn't do crunch time by putting in that buffer, because problems are gonna exist and you're gonna need time for bug fixing and whatnot. And that needs to be planned for. And that's the only way that you can escape the crunch, is by planning properly and not just saying like, oh, I think this is going to be about a week, when something might take a month.
But that's
also, you can't really plan for crunch. Like, what will be the issues? You can't really plan for what those issues, like feature creep, like Sophie just laid out. It's hard to plan for those. And it's kind of known in our industry that there will be some crunch time, right? So we do kind of know that comes with the job. Often when you're applying for a job, this is stuff that you need to discuss with your employer. But that's another topic. But in the end, the crunch time itself should not be planned. The entire project on paper should be able to be done within the planned time. Because if you're already planning overtime, that means when there comes issues that you don't see coming, you will have to add on to that, and you will completely stress out your team.
Yeah, so I think that already we are seeing kind of two different questions arising, and it's so great to hear that we're all pretty vocal, even from the beginning. Obviously, this is a very hot button topic, and it's one that's extremely relevant, especially, I think, during these Corona times, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But I think we're already seeing two questions, whether crunch time is more of an individual a question of individual management, or is it more structural? I think we're also seeing the question of, can you plan or should you plan in crunch time beforehand, or is that even not possible? But before we jump into those things, I just want to ask you all, and this is actually a question that Marcelo submitted. So I see Marcelo on my screen, so I'm just going to hand it over to Marcelo. I see that he asks, is there a way to prevent crunch culture? I will also pair this with another question for you all, which is crunch time essential in some situations? Are there any instances where crunch is necessary? So two parts of that question. Is crunch necessary? Are there situations where it is beneficial for you? And if not, how do you prevent crunch?
I think when we're discussing that question, it's kind of an ideal world scenario that we can discuss then, because is it necessary? In an ideal world, absolutely not. In an ideal world, you have enough time when bugs pop up to work on those. In an ideal world, you don't have investors and producers that are all after your ass because the project is dragging on several weeks more than expected. So is it, I mean, ideally, no. Ideally, we don't have crunch time. And I think that's what everybody would prefer, that something like crunch culture doesn't exist. I don't necessarily think it's always unhealthy. But before I go in on that, I want to let other people weigh in on this.
Thank you, Robin. Let's jump right back to Marcelo. our question asker. So Marcelo, again, 2 questions. Are there any benefits of crunch culture? Is it necessary? And is there a way to prevent it if not?
Well, first and foremost, I would kind of agree with what Robin just said. Ideally, in like a perfect world, crunch culture would just not exist at all. There will be enough time planned way ahead for problems, and it's all going to be manageable. But fact is, it's the world we live in. It's not possible to plan it in that way yet. There might be in the future. But also just in general, considering crunch culture, I kind of think in a way it does have benefits, because even if you can't like plan ahead in the time, what crunch culture kind of does in the end is you work overtime, you work a little long on your projects, you fix the bugs that arise spontaneously. So I might be wrong in my opinion, but well, my thought process is kind of maybe it teaches you to be a little more spontaneous. Maybe it teaches you to, in a short amount of time, do more progress than usual. So kind of like an extra push. Yeah, arguably it might be a little unhealthy, but perhaps a benefit could actually be that in a very short amount of time, in a week that you have now before the project is due, to kind of do a little more than usual, invest a little more time, a little more work to get it done. And perhaps with time, that will make you slightly more like more of a streamlined worker in a way.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I
Thank you,
think
Marcelo.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Sophie.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah, it's good to have some moments of decompression and then higher intensity work. It's when that starts to flow into your evenings and your weekends, and that's when the problems really arise. I enjoy full production as an engineer. I really enjoy a project that's in full swing and there's lots of stuff going on. You've got momentum with a team and it's fun, but there's a big difference between having a very productive time and lots of stuff getting done, and there is some pressure and you are crunching. I think that, yeah, so when it goes outside of those bounds of where your personal life lives, that's when it becomes problematic.
Yeah. I would also like to add, is this something that you signed up for or not? I know people and they signed up to do overtime work because they wanted to earn more money, or they wanted to kind of go for that kind of environment. Whereas you can have older developers, they have a family, they have children, they need to be there. They do not have such space for that. And they, by the time they're that age, they already earn more because of their seniority and experience level. But I do kind of want to go back to what was said about the idea that crunch simply cannot be avoided. I both agree and disagree with that statement. And that kind of depends on the project. So, or on a lot of different factors, not just the project, but like, is it a game that you're working on that's on a next gen console? Like, for example, like now with PS5. I know what it's like to work in a company for a brand new console. And then there are a lot more uncertainties of what is going to happen. And it's a more of a certainty that crunch will be likely a problem because you deal with a bunch of new technologies, whereas you're deeper into a console cycle, or you're more familiar with an engine, or let's say it's a sequel of a sequel. This is a project that's much easier to plan, and you shouldn't have much crunch time in those situations. If that happens, especially on big productions, it's usually a fault of the company trying to cut costs, trying to understaff, or just trying to basically kind of also, I don't like to use the word abuse, but kind of, yeah, use their employers to kind of squeeze out that little extra bit to look at their bottom line. So you need to know that when you work in this industry, you also need to kind of, respect yourself as a worker, and you need to be respected. If we all do this, we will all have better working conditions, because crunch is inherently related to your working conditions. Like Sophie said, like sometimes when you have a passion project, it's fine, but you have to work on things that you might not have that much passion for. And is it then also that great to do overtime? I think you guys can all relate, even students, when you've worked on a project that, I'm not really interested in the subject, but you have to finish it. Then at that point, it becomes a lot less fun. And it shouldn't be okay when you have to just crunch and just hate your life working on something, right? Like that's what we try to avoid. But if you sign up to it, it's totally fine.
I would just like to add that I think that's probably the most dangerous one, the crunch time that you kind of impulse yourself. I'd say, it's a passion project. You really want to work on that and you are really enjoying it. From my experience, and I think, I've been only in the industry for not even 3 years now. But I think, when you are really dedicated to the project, it's really difficult to get your hands out of it, and that's just not beneficial, not only for you but also your fellow workers, because then let's say that you put up this amount of work in one day, like these standards, and then do you think that that's done in the normal amount of work or time of work? But then the other people can really relate to that. They are not following your the amount of time that you're putting in. So I think, in my experience, what I really had to deal with is just the time that I was putting on my own, and I had to stop, and I had to tell myself, okay, I know you really enjoy this, but you need to stop this, because it's, even if, as I said, it's something that you really enjoy, I always found that it was really beneficial to just take a break from it. So for me, that's the dangerous one, the one that you impose yourself, not the one that maybe the company is imposing yourself. I didn't have that let's say, like, bad luck of having that type of crunch. For me, it was only the one that I was putting on myself, and I think that's the one that individually we should start changing a bit. Like that, I see that type of mindset in this industry more than in other industries, for example.
Pablo, but when you're talking about the crunch time that you put on yourself, right? Because it's a strange, it starts to become a strange concept for me when you start putting it on yourself. Do you mean I was really passionate about this project and I wanted to keep working and I found out that it's just too much, so that's why I stopped? Or do you mean it was expected of me to keep working on that?
It's not expected of me, I think. At least for me, in my experience, I didn't have that pressure of, okay, the leads are expecting me to work until this hour. Not at all, but I was new. I'm just talking about my early years, like 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So I was quite new, and then I was like, okay, I really want to deliver the amount of work that the other guys are doing, or girls. And then you tend to stay a bit later. So that's the one that I mean. And over these last 2 years, I realized that didn't really do any good to me. And again, I didn't have any crazy experiences or like a lot of overtime. I think I stayed once to have dinner at the studio. That was the only thing. But I did stay a few more days, just, okay, a couple of extra hours, or I will end a week with 5 extra hours of overtime. So that's the one that I mean. And I had to correct it a bit over these last 2 years. It's just, you're really passionate about, and you know what it is, at least for art, the art department, there's something that, it's never finished. It's not like a math problem that you just have a solution, and then with art, you always can push it a bit more, and then you can find new solutions. And I found it really hard to stop at that stage.
It's difficult, like, because sometimes, like, I see Oscar in the comments say, sometimes they weaponize your passion for a project. Like employers, they will kind of take advantage. They see that you're a trailblazer and this is good for them financially. So they're like, oh, sure, like, work overtime, and you are really like going in. But after a while, it can, like you also said, that after a while you had to stop yourself. And I assume that the reason why you had to stop yourself is because you were getting very uncomfortable with yourself, and it was becoming obsessive and unhealthy, probably to a certain point. And this is when you have to cut back, because you can actually lose your passion by becoming too obsessed with it, and then at a certain point it doesn't become fun anymore, and you can lose it.
Yeah.
So I also
for me,
go ahead,
sorry.
Pablo. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that, for me it was also about, okay, right now I still until, let's say, like 7 or 8 just doing this task, and then it's almost like I set up a standard for myself, and then maybe my lead or my boss will know that, okay, in one day he was able to do this, but that was not really true, because maybe I still have it later. So then you need to, I was almost forced to say, okay, that's what they expect now from me, so I need to go and match that. But that's not really real. So it's not that I was starting to get unhealthy or anything. It was just like, okay, this is just not fair for myself. And even though I really enjoy it, it's always better when I decided to stop at the time and then just go home, do other things, and then go fresh new next day.
So quickly, I would like to jump back to a comment that Alexander made, actually. You mentioned that you sign up for this. This is something that you sign up for. And I'd really like to hear from you all about the expectations that are there when you sign up for being a student, for example, at DIE, or in the industry in terms of crunch time. So I just think that the statement, you sign up for this, I think that...
I want to rephrase my statement. Sometimes you sign up for it. So I didn't mean that you sign up for crunch. Like I can give an example. When I was hired to do a job where I would be paid by the hour, this highly incentivizes me to do overtime. They needed somebody to do a lot of overtime. So I was fine with that. I was being paid for every hour. Whereas, let's say you're just paid for a 9 to 5 and you have to do overtime. I'm not okay with that. I wouldn't sign up with that. I would not be okay. So it's all about, that's what I mean. It's what you want to sign up for. This is something you need to negotiate when you go on an interview. When you're new, you won't be negotiating a lot of these things because you won't have experience with what your problem is with overtime. This is also something that comes over time, how to deal with overtime. So.
Okay, great. So it's heavily context dependent then, it sounds like, Alexander.
It's a person. If some people have a personal choice. Also, some companies, they believe that people need to go through the trenches. I know companies, they believe you need to first do overtime before you can be chill. I am not okay with this philosophy, and I don't want to work for those companies. But if you think that's fine, then you can sign up. It's a free world. It's a choice.
Steven, I want to jump over to you and see if you have any comments about that as well, as a student currently at DIE.
Yeah, I mean, how do I phrase it? So, it's kind of hard because I know for DIE it's a personal thing, right? You're a student, you know what the metrics are to pass a course, so to speak, and it's up to you how much you want to gain, for example. And I, as a person who tries to excel at everything, kinda, it is that's what I say. It's a personal thing. That's why I don't think that I can brought it up that much, because yeah, I'm pushing myself quite hard. But I would like to come back to that what Alex says. Are there like types of contracts? Because I obviously don't have professional experience right now, but are there like these two kinds of contracts that you mentioned when it comes to like crunch time, that you have like, okay, you get paid hourly, or you get like paid a fixed rate, and then when you have to do overtime, it's a sort of a unfortunate thing, but we don't compensate for that? Or is it also like, okay, you know, you just get this 9 to 5 job, but if there is then you get compensation for that? And also like if there's like an extreme case of crunch time, is there like an extra compensation for that as well?
Yeah. So perhaps I would love to also hear Sophie's take on this, but my take is that you have to kind of discuss this before you negotiate for the job. So if you're a student, I would consider when you apply for a job to ask, how common is overtime in your company, and think about like how well can I deal with this much overtime. Sometimes some companies, they don't crunch, but they have the occasional overtime, right? And when there's overtime, how do I personally want to be compensated for that? Do I want to be compensated in money, or do I want to be compensated with extra days off? Like some companies, they will give you a day off, whereas other people, they rather just be paid. So this is something you need to negotiate for when it's on the table. That's why it's good to make these kind of agreements between your boss. Your boss prefers it this way because, you know, they have to deal with so many factors. And if this happens like mid crunch, and then suddenly an employee loses his mind, like, oh, I got to do all this crunch stuff. It's better that you kind of come prepared, and you ask out what the company culture is like and the production cycle is like.
Sophie, anything to add to that?
I've got an anecdote about that, pretty much. So we were finaling and we were crunching. Not very hard, but we were crunching. And people were coming in on the weekends, people from across the teams. There were programmers, there were artists. And we had a dollar board, a whiteboard where you could mark how many days that you came in on the weekend, half days counted, and then you would, at the end, you would get paid holiday, well, you get holiday in lieu, or you would get paid, or a combination of the two. But that is kind of really awful because it's optional crunch, right? They're not gonna punish you for not coming on the weekend, but you are not getting the rewards of coming in on the weekend, which is just like probably even worse. Because then you get people who have kids. They want to go home. They want to have a life. I want to have a life, but I was 22, 21. I was living alone. I was pretty bored at home, and I was like, right, might as well just go in and work and make money and get holidays. And I think that's even worse. I think the only really good response that you can get to, so how do you deal with overtime, is, do you do paid overtime? The only good response to that as a company would be like, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And this is something that a company that I have worked for in the past has said during the interview phase. Like, these are the kind of things that you need to be scanning for. And they were right. I never did a day of overtime in there. So
very insightful anecdote. Robin looks like he very much wants to say something over here, so let's pass it over to Robin.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where I'm hearing, Sophie, that you're vehemently against this. I can't follow you in that one. Simply on the basic fact that you're against people working more and getting paid for that, or getting vacations days for that, and you think it's unfair that the people who don't do that don't get paid or don't get vacation days. That is something
I think it incentivizes the wrong thing. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's the way the world works. The world incentivizes work with reward.
Okay, well, you can be, let's say you have a family, right? Like you want to have a life like Sophie, right? Which some of us do, some of us don't, life choices. But let's say you don't want to do overtime, then you need to negotiate for a good wage, right? And you should be happy with that, right? You're willing to work for that. And then overtime, it can be an option, and you can be like, oh, they're making more, but it's a trade-off then. But I do agree with Sophie at the same time, where certain companies are like, yeah, overtime work, we don't do that over here. There is another fact or another topic that we can get into later, but is it really effective? I've seen companies who are just like, we don't do it because we think it makes our employees more not lazy, but just burned out, and work goes less quick, and it creates a toxic culture. People are also more stressed, and they work it out on each other. So I am completely with Sophie on that one, that some companies, they do kind of create this kind of two sides fighting each other, where there's a side who wants to have a life and a side that doesn't have a life and so also just wants to work and get paid, and it's very difficult.
Now, I agree with the negative connotations. I also don't think overtime will give the benefits that a lot of companies are looking for. You know, you get more tired, you get more burned out on a project, you start making more mistakes. These are, I think, natural consequences of working more and more and more. On the other hand, I'm still adamant in my belief that if people want to go in and work on the weekend for extra pay or extra vacation, that I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm here to be convinced otherwise, but
so when the guy at the desk next to me comes in every weekend and works every weekend for that extra pay, and the guy behind me does that, then you start getting that peer pressure, and you're not part of the team when you're not doing that, and that's just a really unhealthy sign. I can understand that I love what I do. I love being an engineer. And if I feel like I want to do more engineering on the weekend, then that's cool. I've got personal projects to do that. It's just like, so for the money and the pay, it's like Alex said, it's if you're not being paid enough, if you don't have enough holidays, then that's a separate issue entirely. And yeah, so it's just like the peer pressure of it. And it's very easy to get lost in your overtime, especially if it's paid and you like me, when I was doing overtime ages ago, like very long ago. And then I quit my job and then I had nothing. I had no social life because my social life was work and the people I hung out with until 10 p.m. at work, and in the weekends at work. So it's like there's a myriad of reasons why it's bad.
So I would actually, sorry, Robin, but I'd love to hear also, I hear peer pressure as a concept that Sophie uses behind her reasoning. I'd love to hear from the current students as well. So Stephen and Marcelo, peer pressure and students around you working day in and day out on assignments. The person in front of you, the person beside you, they're working 12 plus hours a day. What does that do to you? What does that make you feel, and how does that make you view your own concepts towards crunch time?
Marcelo, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. In my case, I would probably, in a way, agree with Sophie on this one. Because in school, I've noticed that a lot of my fellow classmates, they seem to be weeks ahead on the work and they're on schedule. And it really does kind of, but this is also now, that's a little bit of a problem because it can be a benefit and something bad as well. It does make you kind of want to put in overtime. Now, I don't have a job, I'm just a student. So in my case, it could actually be a benefit that if everyone around me is working more, if they're kind of spending all their days working, it could be seen as a benefit that now the peer pressure from my fellow classmates is kind of making me work a lot as well. In my case, it would be better. But if, let's say, this is a job now where I perhaps want to have more social life, where I don't need the extra pay and having that peer pressure around me, I can see how kind of the peer pressure dragging me along could actually be a really bad thing. And I'm wanting to spend more time with my family or with my friends, but the peer pressure is kind of not allowing me because in my job there, I have to work harder to keep up with everyone else.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying basically that the situation it looks a little bit different for a full-time student than for someone in the industry.
I would say in my case as a student, because we still get, I don't know exactly how it is in the industry with holidays and with free time and exactly how it's arranged, what time you start. But so for me as a student, I just kind of need to pass. I'm really going to, I'm kind of like working to get the job, but I think things are different once you actually have the job. I'm not sure how much exactly. I haven't done an internship yet, so I can't really compare in that way. But in my case, for example, having the peer pressure of actually needing to work more, it could, in my case, it could better my grades, for example. There would be a benefit of this student peer pressure on me from everyone working harder.
I was
Pablo,
just gonna say,
yeah.
Regarding that, I think, and I was guilty on that during DIA. Like I was putting quite a lot of time, and it's not that I regret it, but something that I would like to change if I could go back, it was taking faster decisions. I don't think it's that much about working, let's say, like 12 hours, 15 hours a day. I think it's more important to learn how to take faster decisions. And again, I'm gonna go back to the art department. Like you can always drag something till the end and you won't be happy with it. But if you learn how to stop and to take faster decisions, say, okay, I'm gonna go for this, I'm gonna go for that, and give yourself to this time frame, like, okay, I'm gonna spend 7 hours. And I don't care if I don't really, 100% happy at this stage, but then I'm gonna learn to stop at that stage and then keep on the workflow and keep on the entire process. I think, that's something that I would like to encourage people. Being a student, it's not about spending a huge amount of hours. It's just, spending it properly and making quicker decisions. I think that will help you a lot.
I think it's also important to sort of make a bit of a distinction between crunch time for students and crunch time in the industry. I might make myself woefully unpopular with my students by saying this, but it is, in my opinion, totally different when you're a student or not. In the end, I feel, and again, this is my personal opinion on the matter, I feel that when you're studying something, you got to do that for yourself, right? You decide the amount of time you want to put into it. The curriculum you're following, whether that's DE or anything else, decides what you need to be able to do in order to pass and get that degree and demonstrate the skills necessary to thrive, survive in the industry you want to go into, regardless of whatever that is. But as a student, you're working 12, 15, 26 hours a day. I don't care. That's up to you. And I don't see the negative part of that because you decide when enough is enough for that. Now, there's a lot of black holes that you can get sucked into as a student. That guy's working another 2 hours, so I got to do that as well. I just took a look at that person's work, which looks a lot better than mine, so now I got to work as well. And when you start pressuring yourself to do that work, it might become a negative thing, right? You lose sleep, you perhaps don't take care of yourself. So I'm not saying it's all positive. What I am saying is that the crunch time you have as a student is actually time you're investing in yourself, in improving your skills, in making you better. And this is the ideal time to do it when you're a student. It becomes different when you go into the industry, when you are working 8 hours, 10 hours a day, depending on whatever you're doing. And then there's a whole bunch of nuances that spring forth out of that. Are you getting paid to do overtime? Is it once a month? Is it once a week? Is it every day? And the exception is that you can't go home. Don't you have a social life? Do you have a social life? That's when all those questions become a lot more relevant, in my opinion. Now, I'm not advocating having no social life as a student, not enjoying your student life, not enjoying your friends. But it is different when you're studying because, once again, you're investing in yourself at that point.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, anything to add as a current student as well?
No, I think I totally agree with Robin just said. It's basically a decision that you make yourself, and you decide how much and how in what planning you want to invest this time to yourself. And I think coming back to that, what Marcelo said, that with the peer pressure, I mean, yes, especially in a university kind of place where lots of different people with lots of different backgrounds come together, you naturally have people that are better than you, mostly because they already have experience. And then it's because you have different paths in life, it is hard to understand sometimes that this is not really comparable. And naturally, you have some other students that are maybe lacking a little bit behind, and then you compare yourself with that. So I would say that in this kind of situations, maybe it's just best to see what you want to aim for and achieve that standard, than just like being stressed out by so-called peer pressure, like looking left and right to you, what are other guys and people doing, and oh, now I have to take the U-turn and push my project into a total different direction. That maybe goes also in the direction that Pablo said, that you have to make faster decisions, but at the same time, you also have to decide how far you want to push yourself.
Yeah, I was just gonna add something really quick. I think the problem might come once you translate or you carry over that mindset to then when you start working, and that's again something that I experienced. So that's why I think, of course, when you're starting, it's completely different. It's just your learning experience. You're just going and hammering your skills, but then it's gonna be more difficult if you are used to that to then switch. Yeah, just switch the mindset once you start working. And that's a dangerous bit for me. Like, you are used to like long hours in the computer, and then and again, I really enjoy DIA. So, but yeah, I after DIA I was working, and then I was like, okay, Fridays and weekends, I didn't remember how much time I had on those. So, and when I started working, then I realized. So that's the thing. Like, you need to be careful when you switch those things. If you get used to that crunch time during your study days, it might carry over a bit. So
what I think is interesting about that is that this is, for me, an example of if people are wondering where does that crunch time come from. In my opinion, it comes from those passionate people who, you're learning to draw, you're learning to create something, and you work those extra hours in order to make it look good when you're still studying this, when you're still creating this. And then you go into the industry, and maybe that's a small company of 3 or 4 people who studied together, and they're used to working on their passion project. So they're there for 10 hours, 12 hours every day working on their passion project. You come in, you see this happening, you're used to working on your own passion project for so long. And that's how this entire crunch time gets perpetuated throughout all of, time, but that might be a bit too metaphysical. But what I mean with that is that at that point, you get some producers and some money gets involved. And then, of course, these people see, oh, look, we can push these people so far. We can take advantage of this. And that's how it maybe evolved into this unhealthy thing it is today.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go right ahead, Marcelo.
Okay. Well, I just want to say in short, because I have a completely different opinion on where crunch time comes from. I actually think it comes from the people who end up buying the games, the people who go to the cinema to watch the movie. That because it's kind of like the world is in a way so fast paced. Every week there's a new cell phone coming out. Every 2 months a new movie is coming out in the cinema. It's been announced, a new game's been announced, updates for this, updates for that. It's so fast paced, the audience wants more and more and more and more. So end up, I don't know how far this is kind of like the truth or not, but the studios end up needing to compensate for that. And then the workers need to compensate for what the higher ups need. And then the colleges and universities need to prepare for the industry, which is kind of preparing for the audience. So it kind of goes like back from there. That's kind of like my opinion on where the crunch time.
That's definitely a perception that it's because gamers want something new, gamers want this and that, but it's a lot of times in reality, from my experience at least, a combination of all sorts of pressures. It's not just one. For example, our industry is very worker heavy. And it takes a while for an income for these companies to come in. A lot of times companies are called greedy. I agree with like the bigger companies, but like for smaller companies, it's extremely difficult because let's say you're working on a game, you're not going to have an income from your game for the first like year or 2 years of development time. Games take a long time and you need to pay for multiple workers. So a lot of times companies depend on investors. So then the investors are actually giving you pressure of like, when can I see my investment realized? Sometimes this is from a famous game I won't say the name of, but they released the game super early. Well, not early, but they released it too soon. Let's call it heavily unfinished. And one of the reasons they had to release it is because there was a government grant that they were relying on to keep their studio more afloat. And they had to kind of push and get it out before a certain date, or they wouldn't apply for the government grant again. So a lot of times it's a lot of different, it comes from a lot of different places, and most of the time it's funds. It's bigger companies, they have a lot bigger bags, they can afford to basically, have more space. But I mean, they kind of also ramp things up. They try to maximize and squeeze everything out. So it's heavily related to money, I believe.
And that's the story of why Cyberpunk got rushed. Yeah.
I wasn't speaking on Cyberpunk. Maybe not.
Oh,
maybe
exactly the same thing happened for Cyberpunk. Very, very incidentally.
Yeah. Oh. Well, maybe. Sophie, a reoccurring theme. Sophie, I saw you making all sorts of.
Sophie, anything to add to that? You look like you're ready to add something.
I'm very expressive. I'm sorry. But yeah, I don't think that it's like as an XEA employee, everybody says they're the big evil corporation. But yeah, you get pressure as a game team, and you want to do well. And on a game team level, you're all just workers, right? You're not like, ha, I'm an evil EA worker suddenly. Like, you are still trying to build a product that people are going to love and that players are going to enjoy. And it is still pressure from all around. It's not because it's a big company that they've got all the money. They're also doing a lot of like R&D, and they're trying to build better games for a longer time. So it's still very much a pressure of we need to stay afloat, right? You can't just, if the entirety of like the big game companies, if all of them just sat back for a day and didn't do anything, that's millions of dollars lost. So it's a lot of the time it is pressure from publishers. It's from, even if you're self-publishing, then you still have that pressure from the publishing department. So it's I think it's very rarely a bunch of people that are used to making their passion project, though that also exists in indie especially. But it's as Alex say, it's a combination of a million different things.
How, like, because I kind of make like an observation of it's mainly financially. How, if you could put a percentage, like how hard would you say it's mainly financially tied?
Oh,
like,
my
can
goodness.
be a loose number.
It's a tough question, Alex.
Hey,
hitting us with the hard questions.
I've never seen the numbers. I wish I had seen the numbers, but and I could tell you exactly. I
but
can't
would you say
tell
it's the primary reason?
I say it plays, and what the customer wants also plays. Like the pressure from what players expect from your game. As was mentioned earlier by Marcella, that does play, because as a company, if you are disappointing your players, you're not going to sell. So therefore you will lose money.
So
again,
in the end, it's a business. It's again like in the end, everything can be brought back to money, right? Like
right.
if you bring it far enough back, it'll always come to money.
So I hate to derail this specific conversation. We are going to soon jump in to the chat questions. And I have the Twitch right next to me. I've seen that a lot of questions have come in. So really, really great job. And of course, if you would like to keep submitting questions, you can do so. Just put a Q before your question. But I do want to ask one more question from the pre-submitted batch of questions. And especially since we have current students in this panel, and we also have former students that are now in the industry. I want to know, and I think a lot of our student community also wants to know, does the tendency towards crunch and crunch culture in academia, not only within DIE, but maybe other universities that offer a comparative curriculum, does the tendency towards crunch match the expectations within the industry? And what can students expect when they enter the industry?
I think that's very much dependent on the company that you join, and how you yourself are like dealing with that. I think that you need to, if you're going to look for a job, please take care of yourself and ask the company that you're not just trying to get into this company. This company also has to be good enough to hire you. Please don't sell your soul and sell everything that you are just to get that job. Your health is first and foremost the most important thing. So yeah, I think that some companies definitely are going to be really horrible, but it's very much dependent on culture. So yeah, that's something to really look out for as you make that jump from academia into professional life.
Alex, Robin, Pablo, anything to add?
I see somebody putting his hand up, or yeah.
I wanted to say something, but then again, this is kind of hard for me to answer because I'm still a student, so I don't really have any perspective on what's life like beyond, student life. But I was thinking, because I had a chat with someone else who's doing an internship at the moment, and I asked them, hey, so what's it like? What's the difference between studying and actually working? And one of the things they said is, like Pablo mentioned a little earlier, is you kind of in a way have more time, because as a student now, I don't know how it is in all colleges, but on this one at least, we're studying 5 subjects at the same time. And so we have like animation, pre-production, a bunch of other subjects. And because it's kind of like a general education, we're not focusing on anything. We need to devote our time to 5 separate things and work on all 5 of them either equally, or we can pick. But later on in the industry then, or when you do an internship, you only need to choose one and only work on this one thing. So perhaps you don't have that much time spent on things that you aren't interested in or you don't need to do. It's a little more streamlined. I like that word today, streamlined. It's a little more like I don't know if it's less time, because like I said, I'm not working in the industry at all. But you kind of have time for other things because, well, you only have like one job you need to really focus on.
So yes and no. I'm still learning new stuff every day. I had some animation bugs today, and I was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. So you are still juggling different things, and you are still doing different things. But I think the main difference is, and you kind of touched upon this, is that you're working in a team rather than you're working for yourself. And I don't mean to slag off any DIA teachers, because they're fantastic, obviously, but it doesn't really matter that much if you pass or fail their class, you know? Whereas if you break the game 5 days in a row, then that affects everybody. It's in everybody's best interest when you're working that you succeed, and everybody's actively trying to make each other succeed, if you're in a nice company, that is. But assuming that you are, then you are a team and you're all like running towards the same goal. Whereas when you're a student, you are given information and then you do with that as you will. And it's a very different environment. Yeah.
I will also like to add, like your friend, he just started an internship. He just polished his portfolio and got into a company. So he only just started. But what also happens is, like Sophie kind of touches upon, we have to keep learning and we have to stay on it. Sometimes a production will still be using old techniques or whatever, and you kind of, need to keep up. So it's not like you just go to work and sometimes it's over. As an artist, it's often the case where they say your portfolio is only as good as your last work, and as the industry improves, you also need to improve your portfolio. I had the advantage that I worked for a company where I could post my work on my portfolio, and this is a great advantage to me. Honestly, this gave me a lot more freedom. Whereas if you work for a company where you cannot share anything, you then also have to, let's say your contract ends at the end of a production for whatever reason, or you want to move on, you have to then also get ready, because you have to like sharpen up that portfolio, you have to learn new software. A lot of time things just change, and the longer I'm in it, the harder it's getting to keep up with everything, because it's so much. And when you are in school, you basically have time to follow as many tutorials as you want. You can also procrastinate as much as you want, in a way. You know, if I just show up the next day and it's a 10, it's okay. You're not going to pass with a 10 in a company. It's not going to happen. They're going to bin it. It needs to be what your quality, what they hired you for. You need to be consistent. Whereas as a student, you can be you can afford to work 12 hours a day, but you can be super inconsistent, and you can mess around a bit more, I believe. Whereas the pressure of doing this day in, day out, having to keep up with the industry, after a while, in my opinion, and then also life, you also want to advance with life. I think it's much heavier, but as a student, you can't put on as much weight on yourself as you want. Like some people, like some courses, you're like, I don't really care about that course, and you decide to only put 3 hours in, or 4 hours. And then other people, they put in like 20 and 30 and want to make a Mona Lisa or whatever, So it's also how you kind of distribute that time. But yeah, I would say that in the industry, it can get really, really heavy after a while. And it, like Sophie said, it really depends on the culture of the company. So you have to see a couple of places before you understand that a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So again, context oriented as well.
Very much so. Yeah.
Pablo, anything to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in my experience, I only work in one company, in the one that I'm currently at. And yeah, as I said before, for me, what I had to do is just slow down a bit compared to what I was doing at school, because again, at school it's a completely different situation. Also outside, let's say, school hours, you meet with friends, and in my case, I'm not from Belgium, so I'm from Spain. So all my friends that I had, in Belgium were school friends. So the situation is different. You meet with them to work, so it's a different environment. But then, yeah, when at work, just touching on what Alex said about you need to keep up with the industry. That's completely true, and it's something that in my case it feels sometimes a bit overwhelming, because there's too many things, too many tutorials to watch. There's too many information, and we need to learn, at least for me, how to filter information or to get it in small steps. But what I would say is, in my experience, one of the biggest learning experiences was the job. So the things that I've been learning during work, those things are the things that are helping me to keep up with the industry, because basically you are working in the industry at that stage. So yeah, I didn't want to put myself like a lot of extra hours saying, okay, they are gonna ask, I don't know, to render some environments or some characters, whatever topic it is. Of course, you can dedicate time afterward to research on those and be better, but really use that time that you are working to just learn on those. And if the company is I'm not gonna say the company is a good company, but if you have good leads, they understand your position, they understand your experience. If you're an intern, they understand that you're an intern, and they will give you appropriate tasks. So don't feel that, okay, from the first day you need to be up there. Of course, aim for your best, but if they are good leads, they understand your position and they plan accordingly to that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Anything else to add on the professional side of things in terms of academia versus the industry? If not, so I also saw in the chat there are quite a few people that did not go to school for game art or game development or even animation. And I'm wondering, compared to other industries, other fields, other domains, for example, and it's funny that I see this in the chat, I know Marcelo has a significant history in ballet dancing, actually, and I wonder what sets the game industry and the film industry, digital arts and entertainment industry, in terms of work-life balance, managing a healthy work-life balance, and crunch time. What sets this industry apart? And can the things that we've been talking about tonight, can that be translated to other fields as well?
I believe there's a couple of things going on with that question that can steer it in different directions. I don't think it's that unique as you would expect. It's more a sense of you can do this in any job, right? Any job worth doing, any job that you want to do well, you can put in, you can have as many issues with your social life as you want. You can work as much overtime as you want. You can do that for anything. What might, but once again, I think there's a lot of different factors, but what might have to do with this being a little bit more unique, a little bit more special, is that you get to see kind of a direct result of your work. The word direct is not essentially correct here, but you see other people playing your game, enjoying your game. You created that. You worked on those things with a team. You see other people watching your movie. Let's say you're a fruit vendor. It's weird to then go home to someone and see other people eat your fruit and get the same kind of satisfaction, but you could technically, I think. But I think there's an element there of the direct result of your actions as well.
So you can see the tangible effects basically of what you do, which then makes things slightly unique. Okay, Alex,
Really
you want to
quick.
add?
Yeah, I just want to add something. Don't do this job relying on reactions from people on the internet. It's I see Sophie. Yeah.
Sophie's a big no.
My favorite work has been scorched on Twitter, just completely destroyed because of a certain theme or whatever, like a skin I did for Overwatch. It was a police skin, and then suddenly got highly political and everybody hated it. Meanwhile, it was at that time like my favorite skin that I've got to work on, not because of the theme, but the execution of it. So never look for validation from people, because it's not like I'm going to make this and people are going to love it. Most of the time, you have something else waiting for you.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't rely on that. That's just a comment I wanted to add.
Yeah, great comment and great anecdote as well. Anyone else have any thoughts about those expectations and what maybe would make this field unique?
I was just wondering. I wanted to ask the rest of the people here, because what we talk about today, I don't have it, for example, in other things like, let's say, sports, or you're trying to learn an instrument. Like that, like pressure of, okay, I need to be this good, I need to keep up with the rest of the people. There's like, let's say I'm gonna learn to play drums. There's a lot of really good drummers around the world, but I don't feel that pressure that I need to be up there. But let's say with art or with concept art, as Robin said, for me it's something really tangible. It's something that you can see. If you're gonna draw something, it's something that you're skilled, you put it in front of people, you show it. And I don't know why it made it different to other things. So I was wondering if other people from the panel today had that experience. Let's say, with an activity that you have outside what you do at work. Do you have that same pressure, that same of, okay, you need to keep up with the rest of the people?
But the thing about that is, do you want to make your career out of being a drummer?
It is, of course not. I'm not gonna be being a drummer, but the thing is, I spend a lot of time already studying, and let's say for what I'm doing right now, and then I'm already working let's say 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day. So you're already putting in the time, and of course you're quite passionate about it. But I think there's something that I need to learn in my case, that I need to take it as the other thing. So let's say that I play drums, I want to take it a bit on the same level when I'm learning, because sometimes I enjoy way more when I'm doing something quite freely. Let's say, yeah, again, playing drums. But then with this, even if I'm gonna start like a tutorial or something, you kind of stop yourself before doing it because you have that pressure. And I want to translate the good things that I have, yeah, playing drums, to this industry. Of course, it might be related because it's my job and I need to show it professionally. And a lot of, the work that you do, it influences a lot of people down the road. But let's say for personal projects, even, let's say not a task that is regarding work, it's just something for yourself. I still get that obstacle sometimes.
That's a great question, Pablo.
And what you point out is basically ambition. What ambition do you have? Do you want to be the best drummer in the world, or do you just want to learn a new skill? And it's funny, but with 3D, I mean, as a student, I wanted to become the best artist in the world, but you need to have that kind of delusional goal to kind of push you there, right? Because you can't do anything at the beginning. So you need to be like, I'm gonna go get it. But then later when you're in the industry, there's because we talked a bit earlier about peer pressure. Peer pressure changes a lot when you go into the industry because you have a different pressure from your boss, from your colleagues, but also like, let's say on ArtStation, now you're competing with these same people for a job. Whereas, before in school, you're kind of just have it between your fellow students. And I mean, students, doesn't really matter how good they are. It's not like, the quality isn't like that high yet. So it becomes even harder once you go out into the industry, I feel like. But then the ambition, or also, like, let's go to the fruit selling example, Robin. You can be the best fruit seller in the world. You can have the best mangoes. Those melons are sweet as hell. But in the end, how hard can you really compete with that? You can only really compete with the other fruit sellers in your area, and it's still very contained. Whereas this job is more online, and you compete with the entire world, and it becomes a lot tougher. It becomes a lot tougher. This is also what I mean. When you're a student, you're only competing with kind of the students inside your little school, and it's much more manageable. But at a certain point, it becomes far more greater.
So you think the online nature of it as well contributes to that pressure that you feel that might make it unique in terms of comparing this field with others?
I would say so, because games are also played internationally. Fruit is only being tasted in your city. Games are being played all across the globe. So if you make a cyberpunk style game, they're gonna compare it to the other cyberpunk style games. So you need to be able to compete with that. It doesn't matter if the game was developed in Germany or China. It's you're competing with them.
Right. And by the way, I just really like this fruit analogy. So let's keep using
because
it.
Let's say you want to become the best fruit vendor in the world. Suddenly, for example, you're competing with Chiquita bananas. Right, so that's global. That's all. So I believe there is still a plateau if you want to be the best fruit vendor. But that's completely beside the point.
That's for another stream.
That's the next game for thought stream,
right?
Yeah,
that is tied to the ambition.
Yeah.
There's somebody in the comments like that's not true. Fruit is being sold all around the world, but when you are in an economy in Belgium, you need to earn a certain amount to be able to pay your rent, right? This is very locally determined how these prices work. You're like in India, a fruit seller, you're not going to tell me a fruit seller in India is going to be charging the same and that you're competing with that fruit seller. A fruit producer, perhaps, that might be different, but it's just an analogy, guys.
I think we've got a very... Oh, sorry, Marcelo.
Yes.
Go.
So sorry, I'm just dying to hop in on this discussion because, so like Ali said, I come from the professional ballet world, so I'm really wanting to speak about it right now. The thing is, I would say ballet, I've come to learn that ballet and the entertainment, well, it's kind of part of the entertainment industry. The entertainment industry in itself is very similar in all of its parts, because like Alex, you were speaking about competition and being face to face with competition. Ballet is super international as well. So if you are dancing in Germany, there are other dancers in Russia, And then there's a moment where, let's say, okay, I'm going to go to Brazil and I want to have a job there. And all of a sudden you see these dancers from Russia and you need to compete with them almost quite literally to get this job. And going back to the fruit analogy, you don't have this direct kind of confrontation. You have, in a way, it's indirect because, okay, he's selling fruit on that street over there. I'm selling it here. Okay, he's taking some of my customers, but that's kind of all you can go about. You can't, it's not the same kind of direct confrontation of, okay, there are two people almost literally in the same room or maybe like on the same field that are going head to head. It's a little bit of a different way to look at it. And okay, sorry.
Marcelo, we appreciate your enthusiasm. We really do.
I was dying. I was suffocating. And also keeping up the thing with competition as well, that I think in the entertainment industry overall, it's kind of this thing. Let's take Love, Death, Robots. I think it just released a new season on Netflix, and I've seen an episode where they almost go into hyper-realistic territory, and it made me think games like Cyberpunk, games like The Witcher, Doom, some of the top-selling games on Steam are all striving towards hyper-realism. And so let's say we have a company in Germany and a company in China. We're all striving for hyper-realism. It's creating this immense form of competition that you just kind of need to keep up with because everyone's wanting to be the new, like, best looking game. Everyone's wanting to be the most realistic game, have the best gameplay. So it kind of forces you to go into a competition, and backtracking that then leads to more crunch culture because you're wanting more. You need to put in more to be on top. So you're going to need to work a little more. You're going to need to put in more effort so that you can keep up with this trend of being good. And this is like weirdly the same in the ballet industry as well. So just talking about this is actually awkwardly familiar.
Right. It's giving you a little bit of nostalgia.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Marcelo. Sophie, Stephen, anything to additionally add to that as well?
I think we're drawing interesting lines between ambition and crunch, and I don't think one should have much to do with the other. It's okay to be very ambitious and to still log out of your computer when your working day is done at 6 p.m. I think that very often I've seen friends of mine who have very different opinions on crunch than I do. As said earlier, I am very anti-crunch, very, very anti-crunch. But I have a couple of friends who go like, yeah, if you want to get more responsibility, then you need to prove that you are willing to put in the work and the hours. And I fully disagree with that. I think that's not a healthy mindset to be in. And I think it's okay to be ambitious and to also not want to put in 1 million hours a week. That's the only thing that I have to add there.
All right, and Stephen? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to get right back at that because I agree. I'm actually completely against crunch, but just trying to look at it from the other side. If, let's say, it's your dream job to become a 3D artist, but you don't want to, you're completely against crunch, but everything is promoting crunch. You need to crunch. It's almost like you're being forced to crunch because as much as perhaps you would like it not to be, but it's kind of an inevitable fact that some companies, maybe bigger companies, are wanting you to crunch. It's kind of a thing of, okay, well, do I want my dream more or do I want to not crunch that much? Would it kind of be better to just follow your dream but crunch anyway?
This is the toxic part that Sophie was talking about, because she's saying that, like, basically you can't work yourself up in this environment unless you kind of abuse yourself with overtime when you don't want to do that, and that's very unfair. And I mean, I don't even agree if it's all big companies. Because actually, from even a money standpoint, like I know some companies where they do not believe in crunch, as in they think it actually makes they lose money with it. It's actually financially beneficial to not have their employers work overtime, be exhausted, because in the end it kind of bites them back in the behind. So that's like, I am completely with Sophie. I am also very anti-crunch. I've done it, and in the beginning I didn't mind, but after a while I feel like I kind of grew up, and I am now also like very anti-crunch, to be honest with you.
I'm fully with you there, and it's not all big companies. I've been lucky enough to be at a couple of companies that had very healthy views on crunch, and I have actually had a manager stand next to me at 6:05 p.m. going, "What are you still doing here?" And I was like, "I'm playing The Witcher," and it's fine. But yeah, so not all big companies are like that, but some are, and some small companies are like that as well. So yeah, just
actually, and I want to add another thing. I think if you walk into a small company and they say, yes, we do crunch here, I think you should run for the hills, because in a large company you have more people where they can offload different work on, and people are less important in bigger companies. Why? Because there's a larger supply. You have a higher value if there's a lower supply of people. And when you only have like 10 people, every member is basically a core member, or the whole thing falls apart. And when you have crunch, small companies fall apart, and it's really bad. So if it's a small company, I can just give you this like personal advice: don't go to a company where they say, yeah, we crunch, and yeah, we only have 10 people. It is bad.
Right. And to bring it back to that, should I follow my job and crunch, my dream and crunch, or should I not crunch? If you followed your dream and you're crunching for, let's say, a couple of months straight, and then you burn out, and then you can't do your job anymore, and then you can't follow your dream anymore, then you're even further from where you wanted to be. So your health is topmost important.
Very good point. Also, a great segue into what I wanted to discuss next, which is well-being.
Before that, Ali, can I?
Of course, Stephen, you go ahead.
Not intermission, but intervene. I actually have a question now regarding that, like companies and contract stuff. What if you go to a company, you have your job interview, you ask about crunch culture, and they tell you, no, we're not doing crunch here, and you say, okay, perfect, that is my ideal company, I want to work with you. You start working, you're in a big production, and out of nowhere there is crunch time coming to you, and then you are there, and then you say, okay, but didn't you say that there isn't crunch? So how can I like protect myself from that? And what can you do really in that situation?
I've got another fun anecdote.
Share it, Sophie. Share it.
Told it in the this is what we're gonna do tonight. But I went for an interview at this company, and I asked her, how do you feel about crunch? No, we don't do crunch. Crunch is bad. It makes us less productive. After a couple of weeks of overtime, everybody gets tired, and the output rate is actually lower than if we all just do our regular 40-hour week. And I go, yeah, that's textbook. Then they went, so we also have a Deliveroo account for when you spend late nights in the office, and an Uber account, a company Uber account, for when you've stayed late and you missed your last train. And I went, but why do you have that if you don't crunch? Oh, just in case. And I'm like, no. So it's not like, if you ask a company directly, hey, what do you feel about crunch? They're all going to say crunch is bad. We don't do crunch. It's really, you need to ask different questions. So like, it's a good idea to ask your interviewers, like, what is the thing you enjoy the least about this company? Or like, have you done any overtime in the last year? And like, when's the last time you stayed in late? And if they go, oh, I really couldn't tell you, then it's probably a good sign. But if they went like, oh yeah, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a night. And this is a question I ask every single interviewer I've got in every single interview. So what would you change about this company? And when is the last time you stayed late? And stuff like that. it's really those questions you need to be.
Yeah, really great tip, Sophie.
Those are great questions. I hadn't even thought of those. That's really good. I will use that if you don't mind.
You do have to say that they came from me, just and then
I will.
It's
my
royalties.
Twitter
Like,
handle
Sophie,
and my LinkedIn profile. Yeah, get me in there.
I'll get you. I'll hook you up. But let's say, because sometimes your employer will be dishonest with you. Like you'll in the interview everything will seem fine, and then all of a sudden this happens. This is another way that companies try to kind of get more out of you. And a lot of times people decide to work longer because they choose the path of least resistance. And this will actually make you tire yourself out by working more. When you've made an agreement with your employer where you clearly state in the interview, will I be doing overtime? And on average, like, you have an idea. If they do not follow up with what they have promised, you need to go talk to your producer, manager, or company boss, depending on how big your company is. And then you need to be like, ask them, okay, I see you're in a bit of a pickle. You need me to work overtime. Okay, let's discuss this, right? I'm okay with working overtime for how long? Like, for example, how long is this overtime going to last? Can you promise me that after a week this is over and I won't be seeing it for another like 3 months, right? If they cannot, then they need to either discuss about compensating if you feel like that. And if you don't, you can always be like, well, I do not feel comfortable with that, and need to negotiate some kind of way out, because sometimes they will kind of really put you in a difficult position, but don't be afraid to be kind of the annoying person, because sometimes they will kind of make you feel uncomfortable to force you to do more work. But if everybody kind of does that a little bit, they will ask it less of you because it will be too awkward for them to handle. But that's of course difficult. That's also a culture thing. That's why like we need to have more people like Sophie who are like, nope, I'm not doing it. Like, and if everybody does this, all artists, like students in here, everybody's life is going to be better, right? And that's why I believe it's personally important that people are educated on overtime.
Mm-hmm. Great comments, really great comments, and very insightful personal anecdotes as well. For the sake of time, I just want to be sure that we get to this topic, since obviously and especially within the past year or so, I bet for many of you, it's even taken a more important role, well-being. So I'm going to ask you a question. Feel free, any of you, to answer. What do you do, given, the tendency to work a lot? I'm sure you all work a heck of a lot. What do you do to protect yourself and to sustain a healthy work-life balance and to support your well-being? What does that look like for you?
I think the simple answer to that is crash every once in a while, pick yourself back up, drink insane amounts of caffeine, don't cook because you don't have time for that, and just order whatever you feel like because life's short, right?
Okay, very interesting answer from Robin. How do we feel about that, everyone?
Yeah, I also think that
agree.
you should stay up until 2 a.m. And roll up into your morning meeting about 10 minutes late every single day. McDonald's for lunch, definitely.
Breakfast,
But
don't
get
forget
it
the
delivered.
breakfast.
Don't leave your house. Don't do any exercise. Definitely pro tip there. Yeah,
Stop
because
taking
exercise.
showers.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's
stop
also-
taking showers. That's
and
a really big one.
and do not interact with other people. I think
Oh,
other
no.
people
Yeah.
are the worst.
Terrible.
So
Yeah.
just want to
Terrible.
be clear that this is completely ironic. I think.
Oh, what?
What are you talking about?
So I just want to know, I'm sure that a lot of people in the chat as well are wondering, especially, and this doesn't even have to be crunch time related, game industry related, because there are people on Twitch that aren't from this industry as well. During Corona, what do you do to support yourself? What do you do to find those times to support your well-being as both students and professionals in the game industry?
For for myself, because during Corona we work from home, something that I had clear from the first was to keep the schedule, so to keep my hours the same. So now, because you are working from home, you can just work if the company allows it. Okay, 3 hours in the morning, then I will stay a bit there in the evening. For me, what really helped is just to keep the same structure. So yeah, just put some structure in your life, keep the same hours to work. That will help a lot. And then as well for me is getting out of the screens, because now more than ever during Corona, I spend most of my day just here. There's no that much human interaction in real life with coworkers. There's none. It's just meetings, and most of the people don't even put cameras, so you're interacting with icons. So I make sure that after work I just get out of the screens, so I get out of this workplace and then just do something else. So yeah, that will be for me, like plan a bit your hours, put some structure, and of course do things that are not screen related, like sports, seeing other people if it's allowed, things like that.
What Pablo says is so important. Get away from those screens. Like really, I think that's the number one. I really love that Pablo put it like that. Keep your structure, keep what you're used to, and then step away from the screens, because it's just too much now. And I think everybody's feeling that in this period, because we have no alternative, right? Everything happens via the screen, so just step away with that. And on a side note, get a dog. They're awesome.
I can second that. Dogs are great.
Don't get
Dogs
a cat. They come and lay on your Wacom and you can't work anymore. So get rid of those.
Well-being
Bunnies all the way,
solved.
guys. Bunnies are the future.
All right, so we have staying away, I think, from the screen when you can. Extremely important. Pablo also mentioned seeing people when you can, and keeping a schedule for yourself, which I also personally very much agree with. I think that's taken me far during this period as well. Steven, Marcelo, Sophie, Alex, anything to add?
Well, I could add that obviously listen to your body, eat healthy at reasonable times. Don't like sleep. Have a good sleep schedule. Also, we are like sitting at fuck ton. Can I say that? I just did. We are sitting we are basically sitting, right? Our whole life. I got inspired by someone from Ubisoft doing a talk, who was bouncing on his ball the whole time while he was holding a presentation. And luckily we have some at home as well. It is super great for your back. Get one. You don't have to sit the whole time on a ball, but like every now and then for an hour or so, it's great for your back. I already feel the advantages, and just do what satisfies you the most, right? Watch a cool show, spend time with your family, get off, and just like put something different on your brain. And people want me to say something special, but I keep that out for here.
I think it's also very important to cut yourself slack, because everybody on social media is like, oh my God, I've got this new skill thanks to lockdown. I speak 20 languages now and I'm fluent in all of them. And it's okay if that didn't happen. It's really, really okay to actually go ahead and order McDonald's and pizza 3 nights in a row. If you really can't be asked, that's okay. Cut yourself some slack. It's hard enough. Many of us have been away from family, have not been able to go and see them. If you can go and see them, that's great. If you can't, then, I mean, I feel for you. I'm in the same boat. Being abroad is difficult. I know that many of you will be abroad, and it's okay to just say, not tonight. I'm just going to cuddle up in a blanket and hide away from the world. It's also very good and actually really brave to ask for help when you need it and to seek professional help. Therapy is there, and therapy is really good. So do that if that helps. Well, if you just go for it. I think everybody should go for it. So yeah, especially cut yourself some slack. I know that I've had my times where I've had every evening after work, I take out my exercise mat and I do my yoga, and yeah, look at me go. And then 2 weeks later, I can't be asked, and I'm sat in the sofa binge watching Tiger King for the 5th time, and that's also okay. So, yeah, there we go.
That's a great one. I would say cut yourself some slack, but don't slack off. Like for example, get dressed every day. You know, put like you can be at home and you can be in your pajamas, but like I was joking about not taking a shower, but guys, like take a shower. Don't just like waste away in your in your seat. You know, get up. What I actually did, because like was mentioned before, you sit all the time. You don't have a lot of exercise. Although I didn't have to work at the office, sometimes I would just bike to the office and bike back home, just so I would like kind of reset the brain thinking that I was going to the office, although I was going back home. Kind of, you know, having a blank moment, getting away from the screens is very well. And then another one that I've recently taken is basically, if you've been in a situation for a long time, maybe it's time to switch it up. I worked 4+ years in Germany, and I've just returned to Belgium again because I was tired of missing my family. And although I worked at a dream job, sometimes it's just not worth it when you consider the other stuff. So don't be afraid to switch it up. If you feel like you're stuck, get out before it's too late, because it won't get better. This lockdown has been very unpredictable. We can't plan anything anymore. You know, you thought you were going to that one thing, and then suddenly the rules changed, and you can't have that. So if you feel like you're stuck, get out. It's fine. And if you're afraid of what will happen, well, again, it's like you'll have a bit more resistance, but you'll feel alive again, because when you're constantly stuck in a rut, it doesn't matter what you do. Sometimes even like you can be like, I did everything right and I still feel stuck. It's time to move on, and it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, and sometimes I personally feel like the anticipation also is much worse and much more anxiety provoking than what you feel during and after. So I personally tell myself as well to look past the anticipation and the feelings that I get when I'm anticipating something, even if it's going for a bike ride or something like that. I think it's not silly to think that. I mean, that does give some of us anxiety because we've been inside for so long. So I think the anticipation of things, it doesn't always equal the thing that you do itself. I think the anticipation can be much worse. But Marcelo, I want to see if you have anything to add as well.
I think Pablo mentioned this early on as well, but my tip would be fitness. So in between, like in a short break, I think in like 5 minutes, actually, you can do a full body workout. You can find videos on YouTube, and instead of just, I don't know, browsing Instagram or going on Twitter real quick, in 5 minutes, you could do a short jog. You'd be getting outside as well, moving, not sitting in the chair. I would take the point of fitness. That's actually, I think, that would be my point of like advice. Do I don't know, 5-minute plank.
5-minute plank.
So 5-minute plank. I don't know. That sounds. I think I would disintegrate.
Every time you render, like do push-ups or something like that.
Like,
I cannot do 3 hours of push-ups, man. That's it's impossible for me.
Or jump on a bouncy ball like Steven.
Yeah,
exactly.
Rex, whatever
do
you
something.
do.
So something. I had a pull-up bar in my apartment. Like every time I walk past by, it doesn't matter if it's one, just do something, you know. You can plank for 5 minutes, or you can plank for 2 seconds. Like whatever, like just do something. Don't
that's a lie,
level,
Alexander.
Though,
and you know it. You never did a single pull-up, and you know it. You put that in your apartment, and you got all these perfect human beings here who do 5-minute workouts. I mean, look at Pablo's guns. Sophie's doing her yoga every day, but also preaching the McDonald's lifestyle. So it's a lot of things. Do these weird things that make you uncomfortable. It's the perfect time to do something illegal right now. There's no one outside to catch you. So there's a lot of things you can do, is what I'm getting from this. But I don't believe you did one single pull-up during this entire lockdown.
Are you kidding me, Robin? There's
So
a bar outside.
we're
You
going to
wanna
move
go?
that conversation is going to take place at a later date, whether or not Alex's push-up bar was there for the aesthetics or for the use. Sophie, you look like you wanted to add something as well.
I've got one more little thing. So I started my job during lockdown this time around. And I think it's also really good to plan for time to have a chat, an informal chat with your colleagues. I've never met most of my colleagues in real life. I've only met like 3 or 4 of them in real life. But they are people. And when you're just in meetings together, you don't really get to know them. And it is very good on even purely professionally speaking, it's good to know each other on a bit more of a personal level, to work together. And it's also just really nice to take a little break and to connect with a human being. So take some time, plan your breaks, and also plan for some informal chats with your colleagues is what I'd say.
That's a really great point. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's also difficult. Like I had to plan them, as you said, like plan breaks, but also plan informal chats. Because if you just leave it to, okay, at office it happens spontaneously, like you just walk to take a coffee and then you talk with someone. But right now it's not possible to do that. So you need to plan them. And it sounds weird because planning like an informal chat is not, you plan it, it's not the same, but it does help a lot. And I'm a bit on the same situation. Like I changed projects during lockdown, so I started working with people that I didn't know. It makes a big difference. I'm working with people that I knew before, and I'm working with people that I don't know. So you can see that, okay, with these people, I'm like way more comfortable, even doing play tests or whatever. And then with other people, I'm just, not there. So it's something that is a really good point. And in my case, I still need to learn it, really plan it. And
we all need to
accurate.
learn. We'll all get there. We all always have something to learn. So
Never stops.
Sorry, Alex?
It never stops learning.
It
something.
never stops,
Like,
which is a good thing.
Never stops.
It's a good thing. All right. I'm wondering, just for the sake of time, I think we will move on to final words. Tonight we covered a lot regarding crunch time expectations within academia and the industry, and a bit of well-being as well. So last words, Alex, Pablo, Robin, Stephen, Marcelo, Sophie. Any last words you'd like to share with our friends over on Twitch?
I'll start being the first in the alphabet. I saw somebody in the comments respond to that some people are not privileged to make a change in their life. I have to call BS. You always have a change that you can make in your life, whether it's a small or a big one. And sometimes we need small changes and sometimes we need big changes. And sometimes the change can be too scary, but guys, sometimes just take it and you will be surprised at where you end up. I mean, unless you have like 5 children and a wife that hates you, that you need to provide for, everybody's kind of has a chance. We also live in a very safe world. We have a safety net. Most people can make changes. So sometimes it can be a mental thing, but don't be afraid to make changes. And when it comes to overtime, take your time to do it a bit, feel it, think to yourself, can I do this for the rest of my life? Do I want to do it for the rest of my life? That is the very important part about overtime. I think it's about longevity. Do you want to be in this industry? Do you want to retire in this? Do you want to be 60 years old? And do you want to be working 12-hour workdays or 10-hour workdays? Do you want to deal with that, even if it just comes up like every couple of weeks? Is that something that is acceptable? You won't be young forever. So try to create a hospital environment for everyone. And you know, if somebody chooses for it, that's also kind of fine. I'm kind of fine with that, but also try to create an environment where everybody can kind of do their thing. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but I will just continue then, and I would like to add to that, and just saying that for me, every time that I do something that I know I can sustain in time, is something that I will be able to keep up and just succeed on. So what Alex was saying, that, okay, are you willing to stay like, I don't know, really long hours working for the next 40 years? Like for me, I know it wouldn't work. Like I need to do things that I know I can sustain. So when you plan something and you want to start something new, just do it, accordingly to what you can do. And as Alex said, like take small steps, even if it's a small thing, but then, just plan something that you can do for a long period of time. And then just to end, I would say that, I'm very early in the industry, very young, but I would say that, my experience has been really positive. I think you can, aim for high, go for be ambitious, but still keep like a nice balance between work and your life. It's totally possible to stay healthy, to stay fit, while being, really passionate to what you do. So I would just aim for that, and don't be scared about, the industry being like, with all this crunch time and the situation, there's obviously a problem there, but also a solution, and you can combine both. So that's my ending words.
I'd say take care of yourself. Your feelings are valid. If work isn't working for you right now, then that's okay. It may work for somebody else, but if it's not for you, then you can make that change. But just look out for yourself, and that's the most important thing, really.
I think I can summarize: get a dog, consider throwing your life around. McDonald's is an acceptable meal any time of the day, really. And maybe consider a career as a fruit vendor. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. All right. And we have our lovely students. Steven, Marcelo, anything to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, Marcelo.
Okay, so first of all, don't listen to anything Robin says. The second of all would be, I guess, to work hard, put in the efforts, but when you're not working, to just kind of let loose and relax. Do what everyone else here has been recommending, and just, I don't know, live, be with your friends, be with your family, and when you're working, work, but not working, just let go.
All right. Great. Last but not least, Steven.
Yes, final argument closing statement for me. I want to end on a different note, maybe. I want to quote Yoko Taro, who is a game director and one of my role models. And he said, go out and hug your parents and loved ones, and then the world may be a better place. So please do that if you can.
What a great quote to close on, honestly. This is, I think, a very wholesome moment to close out the academic year of Game for Thought stream. So I just want to sincerely thank you all for joining us on the panel tonight. Robin, Sophie, Alex, Pablo, Steven, Marcelo, thank you so much. We really appreciated your time talking about these things. Thank you for everyone involved in the Game for Thought initiative this academic year. Sandra, Carlos, Alexander, who makes these microphones possible and so we can hear each other. Bert and Luna, our tech experts. Catalina, also Bros, Claire Hout and Quindo, and of course, Rick, our Master Chief. Thank you so much for making all of this happen. This is the last Game for Thought stream of the academic year. However, we have good news. We still have a Game for Thought podcast running on Spotify. So if you like to listen to podcasts, if you have a commute to work, or even if not, head over to Spotify and do a quick search for Game for Thought. And we have podcasts still running through the summer. So once again, thank you so much for joining our stream, and thank you for the continued support over the course of the academic year. We wish you all a wonderful night. For all the students out there watching, best of luck also with your exams as well. We're really rooting for you. Take good care of yourselves, and thank you very much for joining in for the Game for Thought series over the past few months. It's been a wild ride, and it's also been a blast. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful night. Goodbye from DIE.